"What's wrong, Elliot?" I was quite aback to find my grandson Elliot standing there as the intercom sounded. Given that he was wearing his middle school uniform, it appeared as though he was returning from school. Elliot had spoken on our intercom several times when he had come to visit, but he had always bolted from the scene. But for whatever reason, he just stood there that day. I could tell he was interested in talking about something as I glanced into his eyes. I said, "Come here and help Grandma harvest some vegetables," and I opened the gate. Elliot nodded silently and entered the house carefully. Elliot said nothing for a time as he began assisting me on the farm. I waited, thinking he would talk to me naturally. About 10 minutes later, Elliot's face fell and he started crying profusely. "What is causing your tears? Is there a pain?" I began to worry that he could have harmed himself, so I looked for cuts on his arms and legs. "No, that's not the case. I apologize for holding back the truth until now." Elliot needed some time to settle down, so I gave him some gentle encouragement. "Have you been itching to express yourself? Please inform me now. I'm Miriam, and I'm 65 years old. I used to be a teller at the neighborhood bank. Rupert, my spouse, was a banker as well and is 2 years my senior. Rupert once said to me, 'Human connections are the foundation of a bank.' You're a good fit for this position because of the unique way your grin makes others feel comfortable. Rupert was a banker and a guy who helped me when I had no idea what I was doing with my life. He was strict at times and nice at others. I was pulled to him because of his sincere compassion and the way he smiled warmly at everyone, no matter who they were. Because of the bank's high level of trust, Rupert soon became the branch manager. 'Miriam, we've got some fine eggplant again this year,' Rupert said. 'And these tomatoes are still small, but they're growing shiny and cute,' responded I. We started living simply when we left the bank and took up gardening as a pastime, growing a little garden of vegetables in our backyard. Our lone son, Gavin, who had moved out and established his own family, paid us a visit at the end of May together with his spouse and our grandson. Gavin started working for a city firm after graduating from university, and he brought his fiancée, Amy, to meet us 5 years later. However, we didn't hear from them again for 15 years after that, save for a letter announcing the birth of our granddaughter. How are you doing these days? Not even bothering to look at all around Christmas or New Year's. You were unable to even answer the phone occasionally. Our traditional Japanese house had a small entryway, and Rupert's voice resonated through it, enhanced by years of diaphragmatic breathing as a branch manager. "I apologize, Dad," Gavin answered. "I was too busy with work to remain in touch." "Calm down, Rupert." I tried to calm Rupert down by smiling and saying, "You're making Amy uncomfortable." Rupert was talking quite energetically. When Rupert becomes very joyful, he may speak harshly, which outsiders may misinterpret for wrath. "Amy, it's been a while. I'm happy to hear that you're doing well," I said. "It's been too much time. I apologize for not getting back to you," Amy answered. Her bright grin remained, but she had lost a little weight since our previous meeting 15 years earlier. Beside her, a youngster who appeared to be in middle school was carrying her baggage. I gave him a grin. "You have to be Elliot. I'm glad to have met you." "Your granny is me," I murmured. Elliot bent his head and said nothing, appearing a bit bashful. Nevertheless, I was so happy to meet my grandson that I was unable to stop chatting. "I've only seen pictures of you as a baby, but now that I see you in person, you look just like Gavin did when he was young. How old are you?" Elliot turned 14 today. Gavin stood next to Elliot and stated, "He'll be taller than me soon." For the first time in 15 years, we were seated around the dinner table with our son and his family that evening. Elliot was still within Amy's womb back then. I made too many side dishes for Elliot, so feel free to have seconds of rice too, I said. Elliot, though, only smiled slightly and remained silent. Actually, since their arrival, neither Gavin nor Amy had spoken anything. Their sole conversation was a few courteous salutations. They shared nothing about their personal lives. "Hey, Gavin, why don't you unwind a little like you used to when you were a kid now that you're back at home?" Trying to lighten the situation, I quipped, "Elliot won't be able to unwind if you're all tense like this." After exchanging eyes, Gavin and Amy nodded to one another. "Mom, we weren't sure if we should ask, but the truth is both Amy and I are currently out of work," Gavin said. "What? Not a single bit of work? Why not?" The abrupt admission shocked me, and Rupert and I exchanged a frightened glance. We both worked for the same firm, but we decided to leave and hunt for other employment since things became difficult and we were sick of the office politics. However, nothing has shown up as of yet. I'm sorry, but is it possible for us to have supper here a couple of times a week? Gavin acknowledged Amy's culinary prowess and offered his assistance with cleaning and other tasks. They both bowed deeply and pressed their foreheads to the tatami floor in a pleading gesture. Of course, seeing my grandchild and my son's family every day should have made me joyful, but raise your heads. More significantly, are you able to get employment? Elliot is a middle school student now, correct? Isn't it enough money to cover his school fees, examinations, and other expenses? Rupert tried to calm me down when he softly cut me off, grinning. He looked at our son and his wife and said, "They must have their reasons." "I can't say I'm totally positive about your position like Miriam, but it's our responsibility to support family members in need." Rupert smiled and turned to face me. "You're welcome to come for meals whenever you need." "Isn't that right, Miriam?" "If you say so," I said back. I chose to trust Rupert's judgment, even though it would be a lie to suggest that all of my fears disappeared. From that day on, with Rupert's blessing, our son's family would come see us 2 or 3 times a week. Gavin and Amy appeared to be working 2 part-time jobs throughout the day and looking for a more permanent arrangement. I felt moved to provide Gavin whatever assistance I could when I saw him sighing as he examined his bank bills. "How are you doing? Please move in with us if this is too difficult," I said. "Mom, there's no reason to worry." Gavin smiled and said, "We'll try a little longer." I chose to believe what he had to say. The rainy season was fully underway by mid-June, bringing day after day of heavy rain. "Do you plan to depart early tomorrow? The rain appears to be intensifying. Would you mind staying over if you have the time?" Rupert advised. After he looked at Amy and paused, Gavin said, "We wouldn't want to impose." He then said, more subtly, "If it's no trouble for you, we would appreciate it." Thus Gavin's family began spending the night in our home. He always kept his head down and said nothing when Elliot came to visit. "Elliot, is something bothering you?" One day I questioned him. Gavin spoke up before he could reply. Yes, Elliot's teacher reprimanded him after he failed a recent test. It truly demoralized him. Gavin remarked, "I see. It seems that you have inherited Gavin's difficulty with learning." "I apologize, Elliot. Your poor grades are entirely your dad's responsibility, which implies that I'm to blame," Rupert jokingly said. Elliot gave a small nod, but I couldn't get rid of the impression that he was only trying to be kind of Gavin. Elliot started coming over to our place virtually every day at this point. He would call the intercom and remain there for a long, silently observing us through the window, even on days when he wasn't staying over. But he would seem shocked when I called out to him, "Come in," and run as if he were running to the bus stop. It had to have been on his way home from school because he was usually wearing his school uniform. "What's going on with Elliot?" Worried by his strange conduct, I asked Rupert. "I don't believe you should be very concerned. He is 14 years old. That age group of children frequently has 1 or more issues that they would prefer not to discuss with adults," Rupert said. That may be the case, but despite my knowledge that it was conceivable, I couldn't shake the feeling that Elliot's regular visits, despite the torrential rain, had a deeper meaning. The rainy season took a short hiatus in early July, leaving us with cloudy and humid days. I was startled out of sleep soon after midnight by a soft noise. I held my breath as I heard what sounded like footsteps on the carpet coming from the living room. Was my locking mechanism correct? I started thinking about the memory again. I would check the locks every night before going to bed, and Rupert would, just to be sure, double-check the same areas. Rupert was too thorough to miss anything, even if I did. Reaching by my nightstand for my smartphone, I gripped it firmly and tentatively opened the living room door. I looked around the room with the help of my phone's dim light, but nothing seemed out of place. Perhaps it was all in my head, I reasoned. "What's wrong?" said Rupert, who had been sleeping next to me as he awoke as well. "I thought I heard something, but it seems like it was nothing," I said. "I definitely locked up, but if you want, we can check again," Rupert said. "With all of this commotion, we wouldn't want to wake Gavin and the others." I said, "Let's just get back in bed." We walked back to the bedroom and resumed our slumber without giving it any attention. I was startled out of sleep again after an unknown amount of time, this time by Gavin and his wife's frantic footsteps and words. "Hey, hurry up," Gavin yelled. "Elliot, forget about washing your face. Just grab your things and put on your shoes." Amy pushed. I was startled, completely awake by the abrupt uproar. There was not even a glimmer of moonlight peeking through the curtains, and the sky outside was completely dark. Gavin and Amy were hurrying around in the living room as I tiptoed out of bed. A little after 4:00 a.m. "You wake up early. At this hour, what's the rush?" I inquired. Gavin flinched, lost his balance, and let go of the Boston bag. The contents of the bag were obviously weighting it down when it fell with a loud thud. "Mom, why are you up so early?" Gavin inquired in an attempt to be informal. I could pose the same query to you. "What's inside that package, too?" I answered. Picking up the bag swiftly, Gavin concealed it behind his back. Hastily, "It's nothing, just some important work stuff," he added. Amy said, laughing a little too loudly, "That's right, Miriam, nothing to worry about." "At work? How did you find a new employment?" Confused, I asked. "That's correct, that's true. My buddy from college just called." Gavin stumbled. "I have to go to the company right now," and Amy fervently nodded next to him. "Well, congrats, but doesn't this seem a little abrupt? Would you mind eating breakfast first?" I inquired. "First thing in the morning is a meeting. We'll have to forgo breakfast because it's a long journey." Gavin snapped back. It was then when Rupert entered the space. "Everything is moving quickly here. Are you certain that this business can be trusted?" With a worried tone reminiscent of his former branch manager, Rupert inquired. "You've always been such an anxious person, Dad. Really, it's not that bad. Everyone at the firm is polite and reliable, and it is operated by a buddy from college. There's no need to be concerned," Gavin stated. Rupert nodded and added, "Well, then, I guess it's not my place to interfere." Gavin nodded as well, seeming relieved. Gavin and Amy started to walk in the direction of the front entrance. "Anyway, we should get going," Gavin replied. However, Elliot didn't seem to be moving from the door for whatever reason. "What are you doing?" "Come on, let's go." Elliot was taken outside by force by Gavin, who seized his arm. "Is Elliot genuinely in need of leaving?" "He may remain with us since summer break is approaching," I said. "We really can't impose on you any further, Miriam, but we really appreciate your kindness," Amy retorted. "Still, I'm grateful." Amy grabbed the bag from Gavin and walked to the car, ignoring my attempts to stop her. Gavin, in the meantime, gave Elliot a forceful arm pull and told him to stop talking like this. We were unable to do more than observe helplessly as they departed. "Well, at least Gavin has a job now," Rupert remarked. Our only option is to assist them." "That's accurate," I concurred. But in contrast to Rupert, who showed real support, I couldn't help but be concerned about Elliot. I was just not comfortable with his actions. In the afternoon of 3 days later, I was perspiring as I pulled summer veggies from the garden, just like I always did. The doorbell rang just as I was taking a break after working for approximately an hour in the living room and sipping some juice. Elliot, who was meant to have departed with his parents, was standing there when I answered the door because I assumed it may be a delivery. "Elliot, what's going on?" Trying not to show off my astonishment and delight, I asked. Elliot would usually bolt to the bus stop as soon as I talked to him, but today he remained still, standing there for an extended period of time. "What's not right? Why don't you enter now?" Seeing that he seemed to want to say something, I questioned, "Are you interested in coming to assist Grandma with harvesting vegetables? Is that acceptable?" I said, attempting to get him to agree. Elliot appeared undecided about going inside as he glanced back at me in silence. "I'd really appreciate it if you could help me instead. Your grandpa's out at a neighborhood meeting," I said, unlocking the gate and waving him inside. At last, Elliot gave a low nod and went inside. Elliot was quiet for a time while he assisted me in the garden, and I waited patiently for him to open up on his own. A black snake was crawling close to Elliot's foot 10 minutes later, or so I thought. Elliot had not yet spotted the snake's coiled, ready-to-attack state. "Elliot, watch out!" I screamed and pushed him away out of reflex. Rather than retreating, the snake attacked and bit my arm. Elliot gave voice to a little cry upon realizing what had happened, but instead of letting out a cry, he grabbed a nearby stick and pursued the snake out of the yard, yelling, "Get away from my grandma!" I stopped Elliot just as he was ready to start chasing the snake and said, "Thank you, that's enough." I smiled, attempting to calm Elliot down. That snake must have been startled, thinking it was about to be stepped on. I said, "Elliot mentioned, but Grandma, it bit you," with anxiety in his voice. "You should not worry. That snake is not poisonous." "I'm all right," I told him. Elliot appeared to lose all of his power at once, and he fell to the ground. He questioned, looking up at me with a perplexed face, "Why did you protect me?" "Why would you even ask that?" Curiosity piqued, I answered, "You are my priceless grandchild. Naturally, I would keep you safe." Elliot's face fell at that very moment, and he started crying, tears running down his cheeks. "What is causing your tears? Are you injured in any way?" Concerned that he could have suffered an injury, I inquired and examined his arms and legs for any indications of damage. "No, that's not the case. I apologize." Elliot cried, "I'm so sorry for not telling you the truth sooner." I gave him some time to cool off before gently reassuring him. "Have you been itching to express yourself? Tell me, please." After inhaling deeply, Elliot remarked, "Mom and Dad made me promise not to say anything." Subsequently, he gradually removed his shirt, exposing a back adorned with cuts and bruises. I couldn't express how horrified I was by what I saw. "Did Gavin do this to you?" I questioned quietly. Elliot gave me a nod and started telling me everything. My son and his wife had become addicted to gambling after losing their jobs. When things didn't go their way, they would vent their resentment against Elliot. Elliot disclosed that the objective of their trip home was to obtain the gold bars that Rupert had saved for his retirement and put in a living room safe. Elliot admitted, "I heard them talking about their plan. They threatened me, saying I'd regret it if I told you and Grandpa." Elliot had been suffering all this time by himself, too afraid to tell us the truth because of his father's threats. My son and his wife had found the code to the safe, so they put the gold bars into a suitcase, turned them into cash that same day, and left Elliot behind to go on a trip to Hawaii. Elliot was crying in rage and grief when I pulled him into a strong hug and said, "You were so brave to tell me all this." I told Rupert everything an hour later when he got back from the neighborhood meeting. He said, "I can't believe this," and while Rupert appeared to comprehend what I was saying, his faith in our son was greater. That is the reality. I insisted. The gold bars are gone. Rupert hurried to the living room, unlocked the safe, and took a quick look inside. No, but that doesn't imply that they did it. It's possible that someone broke in from outside. Indeed, you did say that you heard weird noises that evening, didn't you? Rupert was still trying to persuade himself that Gavin wasn't guilty. But that night, you made sure every door was secured, didn't you? Additionally, what is it? Is there further information available? Rupert questioned, sensing my reluctance. After giving it some thought, I decided to show Rupert the video that was stored on Elliot's phone. As he viewed the video, his face twisted into an angry and depressed expression. There was no mistaking the scene when Gavin and Amy stole the gold bars from the safe and stuffed them into a Boston bag at night. Holding Elliot close, I murmured, "I didn't want you to see this, but this is the reality," hoping to win Rupert over. Elliot has several scars on his back. He says he was harmed by Gavin. Elliot was too afraid to speak out even though he knew about his parents' team. He must have been afraid even today, yet he had the guts to tell us the truth. We are unable to ignore his boldness. Elliot is the one who is suffering more than either of us. Rupert patted Elliot's head after silently glancing down at his face. "You must have found it really difficult and agonizing. I know now that Grandpa was mistaken. I was in error," Rupert responded, shaking his head fiercely to chase away his melancholy, which soon transformed into an angry face. "Elliot, please forgive me," he pleaded. A week later, with Elliot's guidance, Rupert and I went to the apartment where our son's family was residing. "They're supposed to return today, right?" I requested verification. Elliot said emphatically, "Yes, the refrigerator is empty." What sort of existence did they lead? Glancing around the kitchen, Rupert remarked, "Elliot claims that before leaving on their vacation, they had only enough money to cover 10 days' worth of meals." We soon heard the engine of a well-known automobile in the parking lot shut off. Footsteps reverberated up the stairs, and then Amy and Gavin's laughing could be heard becoming closer. Gavin and Amy were visible through the slowly opening front door, their complexion glowing from the journey. Rupert inquired, "Did you enjoy the trip?" Their giggling disappeared in an instant. "Dad, what are you doing here?" Gavin shouted. We'd never been informed of their present address. Gavin stared at Elliot when he saw him cowering behind me. "Did you inform them, Elliot? You betrayal." With his shoes on, he charged in straight at Elliot. Rupert moved to intercept Gavin's movement and twisted his thin, weak arm just as he was about to seize Elliot. "Ow, ow, ow. I had no intention of acting. Please release me," Gavin complained. Rupert responded, "Good thing I learned some self-defense back in my bank days," and relaxed his grasp. Weakened now, Gavin fell to the ground. "How does it feel to go on a trip with stolen money?" Rupert queried. "Lost? What topic are you discussing?" Rupert interrupted Gavin's attempt to downplay it by displaying the covertly recorded video that Elliot had taken of their crime. "Your goal from the start was those gold bars, wasn't it?" stated Rupert. "Elliot, damn you, you are aware of what is ahead for you, aren't you?" Amy bellowed, causing Elliot to recoil. "That explains why you have been harming this youngster for so long. But today is the last day." With a gaze that silenced Gavin, Rupert ordered, "You're going to tell us everything." Having lost, Gavin started to admit. Amy and Gavin were both big gamblers. They originally justified their spending as a means of decompressing and staying within their allotted budget. However, after a great victory, they were unable to quit, and before they realized it, their debt was overwhelming them. I began abusing my accounting position and embezzling money from the business. I lost my job when they discovered. We were stuck with no option. Gavin said, "No option. Your first addiction to gambling was the root of the issue. As a parent, you ought to have exercised greater responsibility," Rupert chastised, leaving them speechless. "Please, Dad, let's change." Gavin knelt and Amy swiftly followed. "We'll work hard from now on. Just please don't report us to the police," Gavin pleaded. Rupert glanced at Elliot and then at me. "What do you want, Elliot?" Rupert queried. "I hope Mom and Dad stay out of jail." Elliot expressed his own thoughts when he remarked, "I just want them to go back to being the kind parents they used to be." Rupert smiled and nodded. "All okay, but there's a catch. Under the supervision of experts, the two of you will receive treatment to kick your gambling addiction. Do you concur?" "Yes, we will." Gavin answered, "We'll do it." Amy nodded and thanked Rupert for his indulgence. Elliot lived with us and we took care of him while our son and his wife were receiving specialized therapy in a facility. Elliot never grumbled even if it took a little longer to go to school via bus. There are a plethora of sights to view these days. In fact, I like it better, he remarked. It appeared that his discomfort with his parents was progressively lessening, and he was starting to notice the little things in his environment. Elliot was often helping out on the farm after school. "Isn't weeding boring?" I questioned him once. With a smile, Elliot answered, "Not at all. However, Grandma, isn't it difficult for you to remain hunched over like that?" I was always the source of his greater worry. Elliot went to a neighboring scrapyard over the summer vacation and picked up some wood. He expertly made me a little stool to lighten the load on my farm. "Thank you, Elliot. For me, this greatly simplifies things." "I'm happy. Next time I'll create something even better," he said. Elliot was even more of an energy person at the beginning of the new semester. He would excitedly tell anecdotes about his school days during supper. "It's unbelievable that people now pay to go farming." He grinned. "My pals were very envious when I told them that I helped out on Grandma's farm." "It's fantastic. It's time for you to invite your buddies around," I said. "I'll make them my special summer vegetable curry." "Fantastic. However, perhaps we might forego the acrid melon." Rupert erupted into laughter at Elliot's suggestion. "What is this? Elliot's palate is still rather naive, huh?" Rupert made jokes. "I never said I detested it. Okay, I'll eat it." Elliot pouted in response. Grandpa and grandson did not seem to be as much in relationship as closest buddies. Elliot, who had never spoken much before, was now freely sharing his opinions with us and making our house laugh. Elliot remarked gravely, "Grandpa, thank you for always thinking of me," which caused Rupert to turn aside in a little uncomfortable manner. "Miriam, not me, is the one who saved you." Rupert answered, "I'm just an old man who didn't know anything." Elliot firmly shook his head. "That is untrue. Did you not set my birth date as the combination for the safe? I heard Mom and Dad discussing it." Rupert gave a little smile. "It's hard to express gratitude for that. You are our cherished grandchild. Although it was a long time since we could visit you, I never wanted to forget your birthday." Elliot repeated, "Thank you, Grandpa," his appreciation obvious. Our son and his wife continued to write us letters every day at the institution expressing their regret and repentance. I often wanted that my time with Elliot might go forever because I found so much comfort in it. However, I was aware that he would eventually need his parents again and that he would go back to them. Maybe we could all take a family vacation when Gavin and Amy finished their therapy and overcome their addictions. While I reveled in these priceless moments of joy, I clung to the hope that they might eventually